In Antigua and Barbuda, 37 nations vulnerable to the consequences of climate change are meeting in the 4th International Conference on Small Island Developing States. The meeting is aimed at assessing the capacity of small island developing states to achieve their development, an aspect encompassed by the 2030 Agenda and its Sustainable Development Goals. These nations, which occupy less than 0.5% of the global land surface, are distributed in the following regions: the Caribbean, the Pacific and the Atlantic, the Indian Ocean and the South China Sea. Data from the event's official website underscores that these countries contribute less than 1% of global greenhouse gas emissions, yet they suffer disproportionately from the impacts of climate change. To go deep into the debate taking place at the moment in the conference on small island developing states, we welcome journalist Garfield Burford, Director of News, Sport and Current Affairs at ABC Television in Antigua and Barbuda. Hi Garfield, welcome to From the South.
Thank you so much, Alejandro. Really appreciate joining you. Really appreciate your interest in the subject, and of course it is fascinating joining you from beautiful Antigua and Barbuda.
Thank you.
To tell your viewers about what's happening here at the 4th conference.
Thank you so much for joining us today. First, while for some, climate change and global warming remain scientific concepts, its impacts are very real indeed. So why climate change is especially dire for islands?
Absolutely. Fantastic question, Alejandro. Here's it. That these small island developing states, 39 roughly of them, and of course they are scattered across the Caribbean, the Atlantic, the Pacific, as you mentioned, the Indian Ocean, etc. These island states are on the front lines of climate change because, as you rightly said in your introduction, they contribute a paltry amount to carbon emissions. They contribute negligible amounts to climate change, but they are the worst to be affected by climate change. So they're literally on the front lines. Why do we say they are on the front lines, Alejandro? Because when there are severe climate impacts, such as natural disasters, severe storms, for example, hurricanes, and in some places typhoons, the impact of that is felt most significantly in these small island developing states. When there is sea level rise, they stand to lose parts of their coastal areas. For example, there is beach erosion. They lose beaches. And if, for example, tourism-dependent countries such as Antigua, Barbuda, and others in the Caribbean, tourism is the lifeblood of their economy. In fact, in this country, tourism accounts for around 60% of the country's total economic output considered to be gross domestic product. So when the country loses its beaches or its beaches are in peril, then that is a significant economic impact. When there is coral bleaching, when the coral reefs are impacted, it also has a significant impact on the country's fishing industry, which is a significant part of its agricultural output as well. So there are real impacts. There is also drought, the availability of water, the scarcity of water, which impacts on these countries. And they, of course, have a significant challenge already, a structural challenge, where they have high debt most likely, and in some cases, low growth. Not so much in Antigua Barbuda's case. Antigua Barbuda has been growing relatively quickly in terms of its level of growth over the past few years, and so it has been able to have high levels of growth. But the debt is a significant challenge for this country and all other small island developing states. So they are feeling the worst impacts, yet they contribute the least to climate change. And so that's why this 4th conference on small island developing states is so crucial in terms of finding meaningful, quantifiable, measurable pathways to achieve the kind of fair, inclusive growth and prosperity for these small island states. In fact, it's called, the theme of this conference, Alejandra, is charting a course for resilient prosperity. And that's what these small island developing states want to do. And of course, over 100 countries are represented here. So it's not just small island developing states which are represented. There are other countries who have a significant role to play in assisting as well. The countries from the global north are also part of it. International financial organizations or international financial corporations, the IFCs, also play a part. The European Union, of course, countries in the global north, such as the US and the UK, are also a part of these discussions. So it is a significant gathering of the movers and shakers in the global community, in addition to the most vulnerable countries on the in terms of the impact of climate change. So a significant moment and a significant inflection point in the struggle towards achieving this. Of course, let's remind our audience, Alejandra, this conference happens every 10 years. The first one was in Barbados in 1994. Then, of course, it was Mauritius, then Samoa in 2014, and now 10 years later in Antigua and Barbuda. What will come out of this is what is called the ABAC, the Antigua Barbuda Agenda for SIDS, And that is expected to chart the course for the next 10 years to achieve the kind of meaningful solutions, meaningful measures that are needed to help to avoid catastrophes for small island developing states.
And Garfield, let's recall that according to forecast, the upcoming Atlantic hurricane season is expected to be more active than usual. What remarks are being discussed on this issue? How are the island nations preparing to face it?
It is a significant concern for small island developing states and other countries as well, Alejandro, because this hurricane season coming up, starting in a few days' time on the 1st of June, runs until the 30th of November, is expected to be very active, even hyperactive. And with that level of forecast, it is being watched very nervously by countries of the small island developing states community. And of course, it is a significant concern here. It was discussed. And what is being said at this conference, in fact, the opening session happened earlier today, the opening ceremony happened earlier today, in which we heard from Prime Minister Honorable Gaston Brown, who is presiding as president of this SIDS4 conference. We heard from the United Nations Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, the UNSGs, that is United Nations Under Secretary Generals, both Li Jianhua and also Reba Fatima. They made the point clear that small island states, they have, now is the time. There is an urgency, the fierce urgency of now to solve the challenges or to solve the situation, because it is going to get worse for them if meaningful action is not taken on. The hurricane season that's upcoming and the threat of that for the severe damage that could be caused to small island developing states is a reminder that action has to be taken now, and there can be no procrastination. There can be no kicking the can down the road. It has to be that the international community gives attention to small island developing states and the challenges and vulnerabilities that they face right now.
Thank you so much, Garfield. Thank you for your timing from the South. We were talking to journalist Garfield Burford from Antigua and Barbuda in the context of the ongoing conference on small island developing states.